Greetings everybody, Maximus here. Well, most of you may not be aware that there has been an ongoing lawsuit between pilot Captain Christine Janning, who is suing her employer Southwest Airlines, as well as the Southwest Airlines Pilots Union and others, over wide-ranging accusations of sexual discrimination and assault, as well as a host of other allegations. So I thought I would tell you not about that lawsuit in particular, but how that need for the lawsuit came about in the first place. And who boy, well, get ready, it's next on Maximus. In the airline industry, the captain and first officers often ride with different crews on each flight. Occasionally, you get repeat rides with a familiar pilot, but more often than not, these two pilots in the cockpit of your aircraft are just meeting for the first time. And you would imagine flying with a veteran captain, even for First Officer Christine Janning, having already been a pilot herself for 27 years, probably thought there were some pearls of wisdom she could glean by being exposed to a 60-year-old veteran captain on the final flight of his career before retirement. I imagine that the first officer was probably thinking, having access to this 60-year-long veteran retiring pilot, he would be able to possibly share with her things she hasn't yet been exposed to as a female first officer. Maybe she would even get a tip or two along the way. Little did First Officer Janning know she was going to be exposed to more than just the captain's aviation pedigree. And she would soon find out that he indeed would in fact expose her to a lot more than just his wisdom. And he definitely was about to show her a tip or two. However, this was not any kind of tip she'd ever received in her aviation career. At least not on the job, anyway. On August 10, 2020, Southwest Airlines First Officer Christine Janning was paired up with Captain Michael Haak for the relatively short flight 6607 from Philadelphia to Orlando. Once the Boeing 737 reached its cruise altitude and the autopilot was engaged, Captain Haak told First Officer Janning that this was his last flight ever as a commercial pilot, and he was retiring, and there was something special he told her that he always wanted to do before retiring. And hoo boy, Captain Haak wasn't lying. It was at that point that Captain Haak, the 6'4" former U.S. Air Force pilot, stood up from his chair and walked back to the cockpit door and bolted it shut from the inside, which is against Southwest policy and is also a violation of federal law because once that bolt is locked, no one else can enter the cockpit, even with the security code. It was at this point that the 5'2" Christine Janning could only begin to imagine what was coming next, so to speak. Once locked inside the cockpit, the 60-year-old captain immediately stripped off all of his clothes and was completely naked. Then, with a load of passengers and the plane on autopilot while flying high above the eastern seaboard at nearly 600 miles per hour, he pulled out his... Hang on, not yet. Don't get ahead of me. Besides, remember, he was already naked. No, first he pulled out his pilot's tablet, similar to an iPad, and Googled up the hub, if you know what I mean. Once he settled in on the video that got him in the mood, he began to, let's say, take matters into his own hands in front of a horrified First Officer Janning. Despite her shock and utter disbelief, the First Officer kept at least one eye on the controls of Flight 6607, as the soon-to-be retired captain worked himself into quite a lather. Literally. Not only that, but apparently Haak was quite experienced with this recreational hobby of his, because he even managed to take videos and pictures of himself without ever even taking his hand off the yoke, so to speak. And to make matters worse, he encouraged First Officer Janning to take pictures of him too if she wanted. Oh, and if you were wondering, yes, the pervy Captain Haak performed his mid-air maneuver to completion. However, according to a lawsuit filed against Southwest Airlines in September of 2022 by Janning, over 2 years after the disgusting incident, she stated that Captain Haak's activities lasted over 30 minutes, and God only knows what sanitary measures, if any, were taken. But after the 30 minutes was up, Haak got dressed and sat back in his seat and went back to work, placing his hands this time on the actual yoke. In her suit, Christine Janning states she also took pictures of Captain Haak's activities, only to create a record of the event, not as participation. However, I'm sure as you already guessed, in his defense he claimed that she was happily participating in the escapade, which she vehemently denies. In her civil suit, Janning alleges that Southwest Captain Haak, in locking her inside the cockpit and performing that repugnant act, he assaulted her in the process because he trapped her in the confined space of the cockpit with no way out. Janning is also suing Southwest Airlines, claiming retaliation, discrimination, slander, and other allegations. She also names her union, Southwest Airlines Pilots Association, alleging conspiracy in covering up the incident. But in 2021, Janning finally mustered up the courage to report Haak to Southwest Airlines. Why did she wait so long, you ask? Well, most likely because female airline pilots often face retaliation from airlines when they speak up about assault or even unfair treatment. And look no further than Carleen Pettit, who I featured in a video here on the channel. She endured a decade in the legal system trying to keep her job and reputation after Delta Airlines tried to railroad her out of the industry, which eventually ended up in Delta Airlines getting beat down like a drum by Carleen and the courts, eventually seeing her job as a captain reinstated with back pay, legal fees, and hefty fines to Delta, along with Delta's payrolled quack doctor losing his medical license. I'll post a link to that video down below. But in 2021, when Janning reported the incident to Southwest, they told her to forget about it, because Haak was now retired and there would be, quote, no internal investigation. But just like Carleen Pettit, Janning was a fighter. So after being rebuffed by her employer, First Officer Janning went to the FBI, because the FBI is responsible for all crimes committed in U.S. airspace. Well, pervy Captain Michael Haak was charged in April of 2021 with intentionally committing a lewd, indecent, or obscene act in a public place, which is a misdemeanor punishable by a maximum of 90 days in jail. The FBI filed the case in Maryland because it was one of the states the aircraft flew over on the day of the alleged assault. Why Maryland specifically, I don't know, probably just closest to the D.C. office. The pervy pilot pleaded guilty in May of 2021, at which time the judge chastised Haak, telling him his actions had a traumatic effect on Christine Janning and jeopardized the safety of the passengers on the flight. Haak was sentenced to 1 year of unsupervised probation and a $5,000 fine, but was not required to register as a sex offender. However, he did apologize for his behavior during sentencing. But the cowardly pilot also pleaded for leniency, saying that the embarrassment and resulting publicity of this incident has in and of itself been humbling to Michael Haak and has served as punishment enough in many ways. Pretty sure that was written by his lawyers. But while now Christine Janning was enjoying the conviction of her abuser, her celebration was short-lived. Because after Haak's conviction and before Janning sued Southwest Airlines, instead of apologizing to Janning for all the trauma she suffered, the airline and worse, the pilots union decided to take out their frustrations not on the retired pilot, but on Janning herself. And during the trial, when Michael Haak was facing criminal charges, a vice president of the union, Mike Santoro, didn't have the back of First Officer Janning. Instead, they wrote to the judge overseeing Haak's case and said Haak enjoyed a spotless employment and training record. Well, that was an unfortunate choice of words, and that he did not have any employment-related issues nor complaints for which he would have required union representation. According to Janning's suit, the union lied under oath. In fact, the union concealed reports of at least 3 women, some of which would later come forward, who were victims of Haak's sexual misconduct. The suit says they were all victims whom union representatives themselves had interviewed during union investigations. Further, she said in court documents that Southwest also refused to comply with the FBI investigation into Haak. When the FBI sent summonses and requests for statements from Southwest, the suit alleges Southwest issued an internal memo to all of its employees instructing them not to cooperate with the FBI. But when the FBI advised Southwest that it was committing a federal crime of obstruction, the suit says Southwest recanted its unlawful stance. Still, all throughout 2021, Southwest continued to harass and retaliate against Janning. And when she informed an assistant chief pilot that she might have been exposed to COVID through her young son, she was immediately removed from duty for 20 days and locked out of any flight selection boards. However, on the same day, her ex-husband, who was also a pilot for Southwest, reported exactly to the same person that he also was exposed to COVID through their son, but he was not removed from duty or locked out of the flight selection boards. See what happened there? Her husband, a male pilot, was openly treated differently than she was under the same conditions. As a result, Jennings lost 22 days of her schedule and some of her sick bank, which caused her to lose $2,500 in sick bank value, the suit says. Then on April 2, 2021, Jennings filed a charge of discrimination with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. On November 2, 2021, the EEOC dismissed the charges and issued Ms. Jennings a right to sue notice, where her lawsuit continues to this day. So have you heard about this crazy story? Let me know down below. And stay tuned to the channel because in the coming weeks I'll be featuring a few more stories about how many female pilots throughout the industry are struggling to survive in what is still a mostly all-male frat house environment where they are faced with the option of speaking up for themselves or losing their jobs. And it's not just one airline, so be on the lookout for that. Well, that's all I have for now. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.